To politics now, where President-elect Donald Trump is calling for jail time for individuals who set fire to the American flag, also calling for a loss of citizenship. In fact, he tweeted this earlier today, and I quote, "Nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail, exclamation point," end quote. For more on this, I want to bring in Aaron Blake in the Washington Post newsroom in D.C. He's a senior reporter for the newspaper. And Aaron, again, previously, many politicians and Supreme Court justices alike have said that flag burning is defended by the First Amendment. It is a freedom of speech issue, to be sure. Is there a sense of why Donald Trump decided to make this an issue today?
There have been some isolated incidents of flag burning after the election, people apparently unhappy with Trump's election. But this really isn't an issue that has come up much, if at all, in the last 10 years. If you look back to the middle of last decade, there was an effort by some to pass a constitutional amendment which would supersede that Supreme Court decision. That's what you'd need to make this a penalty, a crime penalized by jail time or anything else. It had popular support, but not quite as much as you'd need to actually get this moving. And since then, it's been kind of a back burner issue as far as our political process goes. Now,
I should mention, in 2005, that bill that would have reinstituted a ban on flag burning was co-sponsored by then New York Senator Hillary Clinton. It should be noted. In 1989, meanwhile, flag burning was protected under the First Amendment. In fact, it was the late conservative Justice Antonin Scalia who was a part of the majority back then. I want to play just a bit of an interview with him in 2012 defending his decision in that case.
We have a First Amendment which says that the right of free speech shall not be abridged, and it is addressed in particular to speech critical of the government. I mean, that was the main kind of speech that tyrants would seek to suppress. Burning the flag is a form of expression. Speech doesn't just mean written words or oral words. It could be semaphore. Burning a flag is a symbol that expresses an idea.
Donald Trump does have a seat to fill on the Supreme Court. He has said he would like that judge to be in the Antonin Scalia mold. What do you make of the discrepancy here?
Well, if you look back at that 1989 decision, it's worth noting that it was a closely decided one. Scalia was effectively what you could call the swing vote. It was a 5-4 decision. And so this is an issue that is very much a divisive one in this country. And as I said, a majority of people actually supported that amendment that would make flag burning a crime. So what Trump is saying here isn't necessarily all that extreme or unusual. I think where he takes it further is where he talks about a year in jail and specifically revoking the citizenship of anybody who does this. This is another thing that has been outlawed by the Supreme Court. I think that's a really tall hill to climb as far as punishment for a constitutionally protected act goes. So I think, you know, the overall belief, which Trump has stated before, by the way, that flag burning should be illegal, isn't all that controversial. I think he takes it further than most people would be willing to, as he often does.
And so, Aaron, what you and I have just done is take a tweet sent by Donald Trump and seriously discuss it. And it should be noted that the tweet in question came in something of a Twitter squall, as our Major Garrett does like to call them. He attacked CNN in said squall. He also made repeated references to voter fraud, retweeting attacks on the media as it regards such. And this now has brought us to a conversation I know that you, in fact, wrote about today in the Post about how much attention need be paid to Donald Trump's tweets. And you, I believe the headline probably says exactly how you stand here, why we can't and shouldn't ignore Donald Trump's tweets. What argument are you making?
Well, there is this movement, and I think it's mostly been on social media so far. I haven't seen members of Congress get on board with this necessarily. But it just says that basically Donald Trump is trying to distract us with things like the flag burning tweet, with things like the voter fraud tweets over the weekend. The idea being that he's saying these things because he knows they're controversial, they'll become big news, and they'll somehow cover up something that's a bigger, more important story that maybe is a bigger liability for him. I'm not sure I buy into that. I think that he's kind of an indiscriminate user of Twitter. He hits back at all of his opponents. He weighs in on everything in a way that we're not used to. And also, I think it's worth noting here that he is the president-elect of the United States. With the presidency comes what we call the bully pulpit. Basically, when you want to say something and weigh in on an issue, it becomes news. And I think particularly when it comes to hot-button constitutional and legal issues like voter fraud and flag burning, even if it seems like it's off topic, I think this is something that's worth us examining. And I also think it's worth noting that this style that Donald Trump has of especially in the case of the voter fraud tweets, spewing conspiracy theories on Twitter without much basis, I think this stuff doesn't reflect particularly well on him. I think it hurt his favorability rating during the election. I think he won in spite of all of this. So I think that this is kind of an unhappy conflict for reporters here. It's the president. We have to cover what he says. Perhaps we could, make sure that we're giving it as much attention as it deserves. But certainly the president weighing in on flag burning and accusing millions of people of voting illegally is a major story that should be covered.
And it seems again that we're focusing to agree on one part then apparently of a larger issue, as you point out, that the president-elect makes demonstrably false statements on this chosen medium, particularly with regularity. And you mentioned that essentially he won in spite of this, that the electorate decided that they weren't deal breakers. And so I wonder, is that then a question of, it's been noted that perhaps his supporters took him seriously but not literally. Is it that the media doesn't have that choice to make?
I think that's a big part of it. I think our responsibility is to fact check what people say. I think our responsibility is to the truth. Our responsibility is to be a check on power and to provide context. When the president says something, we can't know if he's serious or not. We can't, making that judgment is a real slippery slope. It makes us kind of mind readers in essence. And so this is a difficult situation that we haven't been confronted with before. And certainly we're going to have to readjust as we move forward, given that this appears like it's going to happen over the next 4 years. But I think our mode in this whole thing and our goal in all things should be to focus on the truth and point out when powerful people are not telling the truth. And if Donald Trump is not going to tell the truth, is going to point to conspiracy theories that have no backing, I think we need to call him out on that. And I think that the majority of the American people don't appreciate that kind of thing if the polls are any evidence.
And just to be clear, it means that we are not discussing perhaps allegations of corruption, questions about his business dealings with countries around the globe. And you, again, I want to make it clear, are saying that it's your belief that this is something just of an indiscriminate personal choice by the president-elect and not something of a greater strategy to distract.
I think a really telling example of this was just prior to the Hamilton tweets from last week, which were the big thing, the real thing that got us started on saying, some people started on saying that he's trying to distract us. Just before he sent those tweets on a kind of a seemingly superfluous topic, he also tweeted about the Trump University settlement case, which is supposedly the news that he was trying to bury with this. So I don't think that he's got a plan here. I think he just tweets what he wants to. I think he reacts to things that are happening. And I do think that, some of these Twitter topics are perhaps a little bit sexier than others. But I do think, the Trump University case has gotten coverage, extensive coverage. We've all been covering the transition process. We've all been covering the potential conflicts of interest with his children being involved with the administration. Those issues may not be read about as much by the American people. But they're out there. There's plenty of information there, and I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time here.
History has always suggested that that people who win the presidency tend to be those who marshal the technology available at the time, and it certainly seems that Donald Trump has done that with Twitter for better and for worse. Aaron Blake in Washington, as always, appreciate the insight today.
Thank you.